Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhed Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastva Andhakaro Vai Rukarasta Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambattvamanusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshini Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramo Parishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tatgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na Vidussura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha. So I thought we will introduce a new segment of the morning class called Nidhidhasanam, Introduction to Nidhidhasanam. So I had promised you that for the morning class we will mostly begin with meditation, and perhaps that's how we made it into a 2-hour session from 8 to 10 initially. And then I think in the recent avatara we have cut it down from 8 to 9:30. So it so happens that I was reviewing a beautiful section in Aparoksha Anubhuti by a teacher which I respect a lot, Swami Akhandananda ji. And it wasn't until I really started to review it in some detail did I come to the conclusion that a introduction to the art and science of Nidhidhasanam as it is unfolded in the concluding portions of Aparoksha Anubhuti, but also brought out excellently by Swami Akhandananda. Because really all of that, it really, just like in Swami Maheshananda's case also, the commentary makes all the difference. The ideas, the unfolding, the examples, the experience. So I've been reviewing that, and I thought that we will do the following. So let me propose this to you, and this is what I'm going to do from now on. For the next, I think about 20-25 classes, we will begin it with an introduction to Nidhidhasanam, and we will begin that today itself. So for a number of classes, don't know exactly how many, but I think it's going to take quite a few, we will look into at least a introduction to the elements of Nidhidhasanam, and quite often actually do the meditation, Nidhidhasanam itself, and then we will begin the Gita. So it's very possible that we may go beyond 9:30. I'll try to wind it up by say 9:45, but let's see how it goes. And eventually I think what we might do is these sections on Nidhidhasanam could be brought out separately so that if someone just wants to look into that, you don't have to go through the rest of the class. You don't have to do that today also, but I will ask Raj and others to perhaps separate the YouTube for Nidhidhasanam as a separate set. That's for the future. Right now we're okay with it. And I sent this as part of an email yesterday to, especially for those that have been studying the Yoga Sutras, an introduction to Nidhidhasanam vis-a-vis the Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga. And as you know, the Ashtanga Yoga has 8 limbs. What am I saying? 8 limbs. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyanam, and Samadhi. And it will be interesting that when we review the Nidhidhasanam, we will actually touch each one of the yoga angas, yama, niyama, asana, etc. We will touch on that as well. And we will try to see what additional value we have in Nidhidhasanam from the Ashtanga Yoga. There is some, and so we will need to point that out as to what the additional information, additional value in the Nidhidhasanam is. So we will do that. And so today I will just give you an introduction and perhaps go into the very first anga, which is yama. And I'll try to do this in about half hour or so every day, approximately. And then we will begin the main topic, which is a review of the Bhagavad Gita with Sri Shankarananda's commentary. Excuse me. All right. So now, Nidhidhasanam, introduction to Nidhidhasanam, which we have talked about all around, Shravanam, Mananam, Nidhidhasanam. But here, this is unfolding the specific aspects of Nidhidhasanam with some detail. So this is what we have to do. To begin with, let us look at the word itself, Nidhidhasanam. So, I'm sensitive to any messages that I may get because we've had some problems in the past. Looks like everything is okay. So the word Nidhidhasanam consists of a prefix, what is called upasarga, which is ni, and dhyasanam. So ni means very close to you and also very definite. The closest you get to yourself, the more definiteness you have. As we know, as we will continue to study, that things that are not close to you change a lot. But then as you come closer to yourself, like for example, the various objects of the world are continuously changing, unreliable, unexpected, and so on. But then with respect to that, your sense organs also are changing, but they're a little bit more reliable. Ultimately, they also may disappear as one ages, but for the time being, relatively speaking, they are a bit more stable. Similarly, then you come closer to yourself through the mind, and the mind also, it's very possible that your sense organs and organs of actions may not work, but your mind, being closer to you, is more stable. Even though it is changing and all of that, we know that, but relatively speaking, it is more stable. So similarly, the sense of kartritvam and bhoktritvam, doership and enjoyership, and then finally the ahankara is very, very stable. No matter what happens, you say, I did this, I am experiencing this, I don't like this, I. More stable. Ultimately, the Atma, which is the source of stability and unchangingness, is not close to you, it is you. So you can say it is closest to you. You are the closest to yourself. So this is the meaning of ni, which means very, very close to you. Then the second part of the word is dhyasanam. And so dhyasanam means the ability to do thinking. Dhyayihi chintanam. In Sanskritam, dhyayihi means, chintanam means to examine, to attempt. Swami Akhandananda ji says that really speaking, as we know quite well, it is not possible to examine the Atma, because the Atma is the one who is examining it. And so it is not an object that you can examine like you do other things. So let me examine this aspect of it. No, you can't do that. But the very process of examination, of the proper examination, meaning to understand the mithyatvam of the anatma and all of those associated thoughts, is called dhyasanam. So together it means Nidhidhasanam. Okay. All right. So this is the first one. Now, just like the Patanjali Yoga has Ashtanga, okay, it has 8 limbs. Nidhidhasanam has 15 limbs. This is what was revealed in Aparoksha Anubhuti, very specifically, and I found that fascinating. 15 limbs, angas. Panchadasha means 15. Panchadasha angas. Just like the book that we have, Panchadashi, a book of 15 chapters. So the 15 means Panchadasha. And so limbs means anga. What are those? I'm just going to verbalize them for now, and then perhaps we can maybe through email or something just give it to you, and then eventually you can actually see, if you can get a copy of the Aparoksha Anubhuti. You can actually see, I think this is given in verses 102 and 103. Verse number 102 and 103. So here are the 15 limbs of Nidhidhasanam. Yama, Niyama, Tyaga, Mauna, Desha, Kala, Asana, Moolabandha, Dehasamya, Driksthiti, prana samyama, pratyahara, dharana, atma dhyana, and samadhi. These are the 15. One more time, I'll just do that. Yama, niyama, tyaga, mauna, desha, kala, asana, मूलबंध, देहसाम्य, दृक्स्थितिः, प्राणसंयम, प्रत्याहार, धारण, आत्मध्यान, and samadhi. A very beautiful examination of each one of these. And so let us actually begin right now with the first anga called yama. And so this itself will take us enough time to end today's session on Nidhidhasanam, and maybe we will need even some more time, but let's just look at that, called yama. So yama means practice. Practice. And practice means a thoughtful repetition until what you are attempting to do becomes a habit. I think that's the best way to explain the distinction between practice and habit. So practice means to, which is in Sanskritam means abhyasa. So the word used in Sanskritam is abhyasa. Abhyasa means to repeat, to practice, to be devoted to some concept. It's called abhyasa. But the end of the abhyasa is that it becomes a habit to you where you don't have to consciously say, okay, now I'm going to do this. It just becomes a habit. So this is something which is not unique to Vedanta, unique to yoga. It is in life itself. So for example, take a learning of a new language, which is completely alien at the beginning. But then through abhyasa, or learning the alphabet, the pronunciation, the formation of words, the grammar, the usage of sentences, then vocabulary, looking at the nuances of the various thoughts expressed in language, all of that requires abhyasa. This is what is called yama. And here Swami Akhandanandji points out that if you look at the various changes in your life that are very natural, then to respond to those changes in a meaningful manner is called yama. Like for instance, you have diseases and aging process of the body. Okay, let's just start this one. So to respond to the problems that might be created by the aging of the body and also diseases of the body may require abhyasa, and does. So for instance, if you are aging like I am, you find that muscles are waning and you need to do exercise more. to stimulate the health of the muscles. Similarly, when you have some roga, some disease that has afflicted you, then you have to apply the antidote to it the best way you can in a meaningful repetition every day. I'm having those problems right now because of the cold, the virus, and so on. And then, I just went to my own doctor a couple of days ago. This is 1 month after it all started. And I just wanted to get his advice that it is not something that is out of control. And he says, no, this is just virus. And viruses can take sometimes 5 to 6 weeks, 7 weeks to go. It's not necessary that it just, we are used to seeing viruses just disappear within a week or two. He says, no, there are viruses, especially in your system. They may hang around for a while, but you have to take some antidotes to it. You cannot take an antidote to virus, but the antidote to the effect of the virus, some steroids, etc. And if you do that every day, which I've been doing, you eliminate the effects of the disease. Abhyasa. This is called yama. Similarly, there are diseases of the mind. And what are those? So the mind has, this is called vikaras. Vikaras means the ones that change. And the vikaras come to you without any announcement. They just drop in all of a sudden. Similarly, a disease, one day you find that you've got a cold. And so the vikaras of the mind are also there, where we have expediency. We don't do things as they should be done. We have a tendency to cut corners or to become overly excited, emotional. So these are the vikaras of the mind. Then desires, unnecessary desires, passions. I must have it, anger, disappointments, and confusion. These are the vikaras of the mind, just like you have vikaras of the body. And what they require is a systematic yama, just like the yama of the body, yama of learning new languages. And so this is called yama. So for the yama of the mind, there are 5 things that are very essential. There may be more things, but Swami Akhandanandaji pointed out that these 5 are the primary yamas of the diseases of the mind, of the vikaras of the mind. Those are Satya, Ahimsa, Apparigraha, Asteya, and Brahmacharya. Satya, Ahimsa, Apparigraha, Asteya, and Brahmacharya. So let's look into each one of them, and then I think our time will be over for today, and then we would have covered yama to a good degree. So now, please note that these descriptions of yama are more or less common with the Yoga Shastra. There may be some small differences, but they are pretty much the similar thing. And they are extremely useful in one's life to have a disciplined approach to approaching problems. approach to problems. Okay, this is what it is. Then we go beyond it and go into the Vedantic view of yama. So this will happen in all the 15 angas. Yama, niyama, tyaga, mauna, desha that I already talked about. So what we are going to do in these classes, the morning half-hour classes, is first look at the normal, useful, practical views of these angas. We will do that first, and this is what we are doing for yama just now. But then we are going to go beyond it and look at the advice given in Vedanta vis-a-vis the verses of Aparoksha Anubhuti, and see how we can go beyond it to understand something much more lasting, much more real than these. These are not lasting. They're pretty good, but they're not the ultimate. So that second step is the Vedantic view of yama. And so this is how we're going, and that we're not going to do today. We'll do that next time. Anyway, with that caveat, let's finish the yama. Okay. So first one is Satya. This is what is mentioned, the very first thing in the yama. And again, it is, please remember the stages. The stage is abhyasa first and a natural habit next. So Satya means truthful behavior. Truthful behavior, not the speech, although the speech has a big part of that, but truthful thinking, truthful social behavior. All of that is called Satya. And it should be understood that we expect that from everything. When we interact with people, we rely on the fact that they are truthful to us. There's a very funny story that Swami Maheshananji has one pointed out. I remember that from somewhere what I read. He said, look at this. Supposing there are 4 or 5 people who are part of a theft gang. Happens every day. These days it is becoming an epidemic where lots of people now come together and they have it all planned out. They break into a home. There's a person waiting outside. They break into a home. Before the alarm the police can respond, they look for a safe, take the safe out, put it into the getaway car and leave. So this is called a theft gang or a robbery gang. Okay, so let's say there are 4 or 5 people involved. Now, they're all doing something absolutely terrible. And they will be punished for it. Hopefully they'll be caught. Now, supposing these 5 people take the loot from it and they go home and they are trying to distribute it, and their thinking is that everything that we get should be equally distributed to everyone. This is what their commitment is, right? They will say, yes, no one gets a preferential treatment, everybody gets 1/5 of this. Supposing they find one of the guys is cheating with them, Like, supposing one of the guys goes to a different room, and when he comes back, he finds there is less of what is left. So then they fight with each other. Say, you are not truthful to me. First of all, they were criminals, even though they are robbers, killers, and they are robbing. But as far as their expectations from others are concerned, it's not truthful. It's not truthful behavior. And I don't like it. So, here what we say Satya means we don't expect others to be untruthful. So, if I am being untruthful, and there are so many degrees of being untruthful, that I am hurting myself. Because leave aside the understanding of Ishvara, that is not possible at all. Because the Ishvara is the ultimate in truth and unchangingness. How can you go to the ultimate? Even in the beginning part, you are not truthful. Not possible. So Satya is absolutely the most important thing that one can do in your life. And in all cases of Satya, I think that most of us, I think all of us, don't really lie as such. I can see that, but people do lie. It's not as though they don't lie. But the subtle aspects of it are really more important. So for instance, you tell somebody, I will be there at your place at 7 o'clock. Internally you say, I am not going to be there at 7. I am not, because I don't want to be the first one to the party and wait. Same thing happens in our Zoom calls, unfortunately. We make a commitment and say we're going to get a Zoom call at 8:30. I think on an average it takes 5 to 10 minutes before everybody comes together. Not Satyam. Not Satyam. Either you tell ahead of time we are not going to be there, which is okay. But if you make a commitment that I want to start the Zoom call, at the most you should be there within 1 minute. Satyam. So that kind of a behavior, that kind of a lifestyle, and of course talking is a big part of it, but also the consistency of thinking, acting, talking, all of that needs to be a truthful habit. And if not, please see that you have a split personality. I remember Swami Dayananji saying this so well. He says that a person who is not truthful has a split personality. You expect others to be truthful, you are not being truthful. How can a split before you march on the major path to Ishvara, you must be a single person. But you don't know which one you are. Am I being truthful or not? And you know you are not. Split personality. Not going to help you at all. This is perhaps the first thing I'll call yama. First sub-anga of yama is satyam. I am over my time, so I'll make a note of it. We will start with the second sub-anga of yama next time. Okay, so we will continue doing this until we have covered all the 15 angas, which I think you will find it very useful and very directly useful in understanding Nidhidhasanam and ultimately absorbing the truth that Bhagavad Gita is telling us. So with that, in a way, this is kind of like two classes from now on. There's a class on Nidhidhasanam and there's a class on Bhagavad Gita. This is the way I think we will do that. So with that, let us wind it up and move on to the study of Bhagavad Gita. Okay? All right. So, last week up to verse number 10 of the second chapter, Sri Krishna was patiently listening to the lamentations of Arjuna, the grieving of Arjuna. And the grieving is internal, but the expression of grieving is lamentation. I'm really confused. I don't know what to do. I don't want to fight these people that I respect a lot, and I don't understand what it will. All those kinds of things he's expressing. We have seen all that, and Sri Krishna is very carefully listening to them. It's almost like, is that it? Anything else? Okay. It's just like a doctor who says, tell me why you're here. So you describe your symptoms, your disease, and this is what's happened, and so on and so forth. And he says, okay, is that all? Anything else? And he said, no, I think that's it. That's pretty much it. You might say, oh, I forgot to tell you this. He says, okay, good. Then the doctor says, here is what I think. So this is where the Gita teaching begins, with the 11th verse of the second chapter. So he says, as you know, I'm not going to really go into the verses themselves. I expect that you are familiar with it to a large extent, but nevertheless, I'll just quickly say that. So, ashocyan anvashochastvam pragyavadam sabhashase gatasoon agatasoonscha nanu shochanti panditaha. So, very briefly, he says, you are grieving for someone that doesn't deserve the grief. And on top of that, you couch that in some very, very highbrow words, that I don't want to kill them because, and then you are making a big deal about it. This is what's called pragyavada. Pragyavada means not just sort of saying, what do you think I'm going to do? No. You have a very firm conviction that you have a justification for your grief. So here we will see this, that really there are two parts to this. First of all, you should not be grieving. All right, so you're grieving, I understand that. But to make matters worse, you make a big deal about it, as though you are right and there is something that should be done. So this is called pragyavada, as though you are a pandita. So as we will see that he says, gatasoon agatasoonscha nanu shochanti pandita. He says the pandita here means the wise. Panda means actually Brahma. Brahma Jnanam, Atma Jnanam is called Panda, is the ultimate Panda. Unfortunately, the way it is practiced in India, you have these Pandas that really don't know anything. They are some very minor Pandits. So the word Pandit normally doesn't mean Atma Vidya. So So those are Mahatmas and so on. But here the word Pandita is used in that sense, Mahatmas. People that are very wise, who really know, they don't grieve about two people. They don't grieve about people who are dead or who are dying. They are still alive or they are dying. They don't grieve. Why they don't grieve, that's a separate matter. But this is how the beginning of the teaching is. That you talk as though you're a Pandit. But you're not a Pandit, because Pandits don't grieve over either situation, either living or dead. Both of them they are not really concerned about. And I will tell you why. So here is how it begins. So I thought what I would do at this point, as I mentioned to you in my email yesterday also, that this commentary on the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Shankarananda ji is a advanced commentary on life. Not an introductory commentary, but an advanced commentary. Okay? Just 1 second. So this is an advanced course. I mean, you can take the same Bhagavad Gita commentary and make it into a relative introduction to the subject matter. But the way this whole book is written, it is really meant for a person who has been studying Vedanta for a while. Not meant for, this particular treatment is not meant for a person who is going to be introduced for the first time. That's a separate thing. You have to do that someplace else. But here it means this is a course taught to a relatively knowledgeable person. Very much like you can, if you have a physics professor, you can either look, because the thing is that in any kind of vidya, any kind of knowledge, two things are involved, isn't it? Two things being that the knowledge itself, and the other one is what is called the patram for the knowledge. Patram means who is it meant for? Who is it meant for? Is it a high schooler or is it a postgraduate student who has already finished 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, and now he's postgraduate? Who is it meant for? And the detail, the emphasis, the conception of the conceptualizing, not conception, but conceptualizing, all depends upon who it is meant for. I think I told you this fact very interestingly, that one time I had the fortune of studying on a project with Dr. Donald Glaser, who won the Nobel Prize for the bubble chamber. And very interestingly enough, I was finishing up my master's degree at Berkeley on computer science, and it had two paths. One was simply coursework for a year and a half, and the other one was doing some research, some minor research, not like a PhD. and there you can finish it in one less quarter. So I didn't know about the research or anything. I just took some courses and I was doing that. Very late in the year, almost a year had passed, so my advisor, Dr. Wattenberg, he approached me and he says, I just want to let you know there is a very interesting new project with Dr. Donald Glaser, and I know you are on the path of doing courses, but if you like, it'll delay your graduation a little bit, but if you like, you can do this. I said, yes. So I started to, I introduced myself to Dr. Glaser, and he said, I'm teaching some physics classes for undergraduates. So if you can come, then at least you will get an introduction to what I'm doing. And then the project that my Wattenberg and Dr. Glaser were assigning me to was some kind of a pattern recognition of E. coli. So he says you can do some computerization of the pattern and give us your ideas. So I said, fine. But what I was saying was that when I attended the physics classes by Dr. Donald Glaser, excuse me, they were not meant for graduate students. They're meant for undergraduates, and he made it very simple. He would say, imagine a proton and an electron. Imagine like they're having a dance. So he was giving examples of that type. All I'm saying is that the same subject matter can be presented in an understandable manner to one who is not yet experienced. But one who is experienced, one who is knowledgeable, the treatment is different. Here, the treatment of the subject matter by Swami Shankarananda ji is very advanced. And I'll tell you why, how. And so I thought about it a little bit and say, how should I present this to you so that you'll get a glimpse of the nature of because I think, quite frankly, one thing I should tell you, warn you, that when we go through some of these explanations, starting with today itself, and going forward, they might be rather complex. And it's very possible you may decide this is not what I want to do, which is okay. You will decide whether you want to do it. But anyway, we have already done Bhagavad Gita 2 or 3 times at a different level, and this time we're going to do it at this level. So the question is, what do you mean by this level? What is so advanced about it? I'm sure you must be asking, and you should be asking. So let's briefly talk about that. Before we go into the subject matter for today, I just want to give you some overall introduction to what is meant by advanced. So let me, if I can state it right away. As you know, and if you don't, you should know, and I think you do know, from your study of Vedanta through others or through me, what Vedanta points out is that the world that we see and we experience is an appearance. This is the best way to really look at it that way. Ultimately speaking, anything that you experience, anything that you see, anything that you hear and touch is an appearance. How is it that it's an experience can be examined? It can be proven so that you are sure it is just an experience. That can come later, but we might as well give you the end result now, and then arrive at the implications of that gradually. But it is an appearance. This is the thing that we should do. Now the question is, so what? So what if it's an appearance? What does it really mean to me? It means a lot to me. So first of all, let us look at a couple of examples of what an appearance means. What do you mean by an appearance? So two examples. We've already seen that many times in our study. One appearance is that when you are dreaming, there are things happening. There are people. There are situations. There are things. There are events that demand your response. All of a sudden you find that there is a scene in front of you. And when you are seeing that scene in front of you, you don't say, "Oh my gosh, this is an appearance." You don't say that. You respond to it. As a dream character, you are responding to the appearance of the dream. So this is one example, which there's nothing alien about it. We experience it every day. And the other example is not something that we experience every day, but you can visualize it. Some of us have actually experienced it, others may not have, which is to mistake a rope for a snake. And for those of us that come from areas where snakes are plentiful, this can happen. Because the fear of snakes is always there. I think I told you this, that when I was growing up, we heard stories about people being snake bit. I remember one very tragic incident where there was a husband and wife who had just gotten married, newly married. And they were sleeping on the ground in their cottage. This is in where the coal mines, where my father was a very senior manager of the coal mines. And he had thousands of workers and so on, very poor people, coal workers and so on. And so one day the news came that this newly married couple were found dead in the morning. And the doctors finally said, yes, it's a snake bite. So we grew up with that. And in our own house, I remember that on the sofa, on the folds of the sofa, there was this chitty snake, which is supposed to be as poisonous as cobra. It's a small chitty snake, like a size of a finger, about 2 or 2.5, 3 feet long. Silvery, very dangerous. We found that inside the home. So we were really living in a snake country. And so anytime there was some kind of a doubt because there was not enough light on a rope, it looked like, is this a snake or what? Sometimes it looked like a snake. So that's the second example. Not many people would have seen it, but the dream is so both this snake on a rope as well as a dream experience is an appearance. And now we say that the whole world, the worldly experience, is an appearance. This is what an experienced student is given to understand through a thorough study of Vedanta. Okay? So what does that mean? What are the implications of this fact that it is an appearance? Many. One is, it is there without any intrinsic truth to it. We don't deny the fact that you are responding to it as though it is real. We understand that. That's exactly the issue. But upon further analysis, you find that there is no truth to it. It disappears. Vicharam na sahate. There is no standing. What is that word? Locus standi or something. I don't know. I think it's either an Italian word or sentence or French. I'm not sure. Locus standi. It has no standing of its own. So this is one implication. And so therefore, it should not be taken too seriously. You see now, here's what I'm saying. As we approach the teachings of Sri Krishna to Arjuna, he's not taking Arjuna to be an experienced student. See, that's the other part of this. As I was saying earlier, that there is two aspects to teaching. One is the vidya itself, and the other one is the eligibility of the student. So I'll come to that with an interesting example that I thought of. Anyway, I'll come to that in a minute. So here it means that an appearance need not be taken that seriously. So if you look at the entire teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, this is what is being conveyed in a friendly manner. Not all of a sudden telling him this, but behind it, these are the facts that dictate what is being taught. Okay? So we've done two things. One, this is not exhaustive, but one is there's no intrinsic truth to it. Second thing is that because of that, it should not be taken that seriously. It should be taken with a grain of salt. Ultimately, you will find that the experience of the world is your own projection. Your own situation. So if the world by itself does not have an intrinsic truth to it, the projection of the truth is very individualistic. That's another thing. Another thing is, you cannot dive too much into it as to why it happened and how it happened. Pardon me. You can't do that. So it just, so in, to to analyze dreams ultimately is not very useful. There may be some logic to it if you want to do it and if people spend some time looking into it, but meaningless generally speaking. So similarly here also, to go into past karmas and prarabdha and future and lives and so on and so forth, if you want to do it, but it's not really the main objective. The main objective is to understand that this is an appearance. Another thing is that upon analysis, you see that even though it seems to be affecting you, but it really doesn't affect you. Pardon me. You know what? I forgot to get some water, so if you excuse me, I'm going to go get a glass of water. Okay, I'll be right back. Yeah, all the effects of the cold are towards the end. I think I should be okay another week or 10 days, so I'm okay. So another aspect of the appearance is that even though it appears to affect you, upon further inquiry it will leave no marks on you. Again, going back to either the dream experience or the experience of a false snake on a rope, both amount to the same thing. Which is that yes, we do understand that you appear to be affected by it, but it leaves nothing else other than just an interesting memory. And that also disappears. No residual effect on you at all. Another thing is, and I think I started to say that but I didn't complete it, that it is really your own projection that causes the appearance. No one person has the same appearance. One person may not see the rope as a snake, they may see the rope as a rope. Another person, you have a dream experience, another person doesn't have the same dream experience. And so this is highly subjective. And in that manner, it's your own projection, and one can even say your own reflection. So, like for example, supposing you are looking at your own reflection on a lake, standing next to a lake. Yes, there is some appearance, no doubt about it, but it doesn't really have any reality. You are the only one who's real. Your reflection is not real. So we can also generalize this and say that our idea of the world are really my ideas. There is a lot of commonality to it because we were all born together at the same time, and so it's an interesting creation where the same creation can generate different reactions, but it doesn't have to. So like for example, supposing you meet a woman and different people who are related to that woman have a different idea of who she is. If you are a competitor, you may not like her. If you are her daughter, you have a different view. Your husband has a different view. Neighbor has a different view. So even though there is some objectivity, but it is highly hidden in subjectivity. So the appearance in your dream and also the snakiness is all subjective. But here there is some objectivity that causes you to really be completely confused. You don't know that objectivity is covered by a lot of subjectivity. And if that covering of the subjectivity can be removed, then the mere appearance doesn't cause any problems to you. This objectivity has no problems. Objectivity does not cause a problem to you, does not have a problem, but does not cause a problem to you. Only subjectivity causes problem. So anyway, we can go into more completes, and that's not the idea. I just wanted to give you a sort of introduction to this. But I think we can now go on. That the whole world is an appearance. So this is behind the vision of Sri Krishna as Arjuna approaches him. This is the vision that Krishna has in mind as he teaches Arjuna. Now we can go back to the other part of it, which is it depends on who you're talking to. What is the level of understanding? Is it a high school or is it a postgraduate? And it can be proved. You can see this in an example. I was thinking of that, so I thought I'd give that example. Suppose you take an 18-month-old baby to a horror movie. And a horror movie which is not on your TV screen, which it could be, but suppose you go to these real movie theaters where it is 3D and surround sound and your whole seat can shake, all that. You don't even have to do that. Just take a child to a horror movie. And the child looks at it and it starts to cry. Supposing this is the situation, it can happen. I don't think that most parents are so stupid, but it's very possible. Now, when that happens, imagine what the parents can say. Will they tell the 18-month-old baby, "Baby, this is just an appearance. Don't be so scared. See, it's just an appearance"? Do you think this would be an appropriate response? Absolutely not. The minimum you should do is to get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. Take the baby out. And babies are excellent because they can forget just like that. Within a minute, you just give them some candy or something like this, and their fear is gone. But if you stay there and say, no, you don't worry about it, this scary looking monster, see, it's all just no way. So now, Arjuna is, as the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita goes, more like an 18-month-old baby than a teenager or an adult. He's still growing. And so to tell him that this is just an appearance, get over it, Arjuna, what are you talking about? That's not what Krishna has to do. Vedanta is very cognizant of who am I talking to. I told you, I think on the Tuesday night class, that in the beginning it says, oh no, there all has a beginning, there is prarabdha karma, all that and so on. So Saguna Upasana, all of the Ishvara with qualities and so on is the beginning for the beginning student. In the end, you say there is no Adi, there is just Anadi, there is nothing going on. And but you cannot say that in the beginning. You just cannot say to a child that this is just an appearance, don't worry about it, and so on. What do you mean it's an appearance? I don't get it. And you are insulting me by saying that. I'm being affected by it. So that's the second part of it, which is even though the ultimate message is that of an appearance, but the way you communicate that is slowly. Now this is exactly what in Bhagavad Gita is. There is a dialogue where he says, I don't get it. You're telling me that Vidya is the superior one, and yet you're telling me that I should be fighting. I'm confused. All those kinds of things are going to go on. And so that means that you are going through a growth period where you can understand the ultimate. So in the end, what the advanced course of this treatment by Swami Shankarananda means to us, and so please understand this. In Swami Shankarananda's commentary, he assumes that we have an introduction to Vedanta already. And by that we mean that each one of us should be cognizant of the fact that ultimately this is just an appearance. So he talks to us in a different language, but when Sri Krishna talks to Arjuna, it's a different level. So in Swami Shankarananda's commentary, as we will see this, I don't know to what extent we can go through because it's voluminous. So this is why we have to pick some spots up and so on. Even to do this one verse, we haven't even finished doing this one verse today. So we have to think, I don't know how we're going to proceed. That remains, Ishvara will guide me. But what I'm saying is that the dialogue between Sri Shankarananda ji and us as students, it is at a much higher level. Much higher level. This is what I mean is by saying this is an advanced course. Okay? So with that, let us at least for the next 15 minutes until 9:30 or so go through some elements of verse number 11. Okay? All right. So the first thing is, Arjuna asks, why would I not be sorrowful? I don't get it. Isn't it normal for people that lose their close people to be sorrowful? It happens every day. So I don't understand why you're calling me a fool? Because what I find is that everyone in this life, when they lose a close relative or a friend, grieve. So I'm justified in grieving. Okay? So here I have picked and chosen a certain Sanskritam Vakyam that you can read to underscore each of the points. So I don't know for the next 15 minutes how many we can do, but let's start. So here, this one point that Arjuna is asking, that I don't understand why you're thinking that I should not be grieving. Why I'm so foolish in grieving? Because isn't it natural for me to grieve? So he says, this is on page 38 of this book. And I believe it's the same page in all the books, all the avatars of the different ones. The one that you got from Amazon, the one that I got it from India, and so on. Page 38, second line of the paragraph, which begins the 11th verse, Ashocyaniti. Second line, he says, Nanu. Nanu means, wait a second. I don't get it. This is what Nanu means. Nanu means that I don't get it. Swajana marane sarvesham shokah jayate. So here, Swajana marane is not Parajana marane, but Swajana marane. Parajana marane means some death somewhere. I don't know. I think there must be, I don't know what the level, what would be, but every day there are probably 500,000 to 1 million people that are dying. They don't do anything, even if I hear about it on the television. So there is no shoka. But swajana, all of a sudden you get an email and saying, my gosh, did you know our classmate, he passed away? Or worse still, did you know that our relative passed away? There is shoka. So he says, Nanu swajana marane sarvesham lokah jayate eva katham uchyate. Then how do you say etavan etan anvashochastvamiti? How do you say that you should not be grieving? Kutoho va mriyamananam etesham shochastvam iti chet. How can you say that? He says, Tvam atra prashtavyaha. So Krishna says, okay, if that is your doubt, let me understand. Tvam atra prashtavyaha. You should be asked. Prashtavyaha means it should be asked. Tvam should be asked. Kim bhishma dronadi shabda vachyartham uddishya shochate uta lakshyartham iti. So this is Krishna's reply. He says, listen, I have a reason why I'm questioning your grieving. Let me ask you a question. Are you grieving because you directly see that Bhima and Drona are being killed or will be killed? Or are you understanding some kind of an indicated meaning in terms of its implication? One is Vachyartha, which is direct. They are getting killed and you're grieving. Or is it because you've thought through the implications of their death? Which of them is true? So let's analyze it. So this is a very important technique. This is what is called a prakriya. A technique used in Vedanta. Any complex situation is analyzed into a binary approach. Binary approach means, is it this or is it that? If it is not the first one, it's the second one. On the second one, is it this one or is it that? So there is a binary tree. This is very common in understanding it, to simplify our approach to problem solving. So here he says, which of this is true? Are you directly involved in the shoka or are you thought about their implications? So let's say that it is directly involved in their death. So that's why he's saying next one is adya. Adya means the first of the two. Bhishmadi shabdavachyasya asadvrittitvam aveksha shochate kim va tad nasham uddishya shochate iti. Okay? So what this means is, now let us look at the first of the two possibilities. One is, the first of the two possibilities is that you have a vachyartha. Okay, let's analyze the vachyartha, not the lakshyartha. On the vachyartha, why are you grieving? Are you grieving because they are living right now? Or are you grieving that what will happen when they die? And because I'm running out of time, I will just give you a more brief introduction to it. You can see how much work we have to do on all of this, so I have to really pick and choose the spots. So very interestingly enough, he says, then I will wrap it up that way. There's a couple of other steps that I was going to go through, so I will not do so because of lack of time. So he says, so let me just tell you the concepts first and then we will do the reference to the Sanskritam. He says there are two types of people who grieve. Without looking at the implication, forget about the implications and so on and so forth, lakshyartha, we are talking about vachyartha at this point. Within the vachyartha means the direct effect of somebody being killed, there are two types of people who grieve. One type of people are who grieve because their loved ones will no longer be there. Very understandable. They haven't looked into the implications of it, whether they are really dead or not, whether they're dying, what is the effect on you. All of those are implications they have not thought through, but they're just grieving because somebody closely has died. So this is one thing. Very interestingly enough, he says there are other people who are grieving for their loved ones while they're still alive. So for that, let me point out, it's interestingly, and he says, if you go to page number 39, if you go to page number 39, so here he says, look at the...
All right, but first you'll have to unlock your device.
What? I have no idea why all these Google things come about. So look at page number 39. Look at the fourth line from the bottom. I'm talking about Sanskritam. Tarhi evam samaye panditaah katham vartante iti aha gatasuniti. He says, now let us look at who is a wise person. Okay, in analyzing that, he says there are a couple of possibilities. Kevalam mudhaha mama ete putradayah mrita iti gatasun eva anushochanti natu agatasun. So he says that supposing you are a normal, uninformed person, not very wise, then you find that you are let's say your children, which is the worst thing that can happen to us. Your own child dies. Then they cry because their loved ones have gone. This is the meaning of it. Kevalam mudha mama ete putradayah mrita iti gatasun eva anushochanti natu agatasun. If their children are alive, they don't grieve. But only when their children die, they grieve. Let's look at the other one. This is the most interesting thing. Next line is Shastragyaha tu mama ete putradayah mudhaha durbhagaha durvrittaha jataha iti agaten sun eva anushochanti natu gatasun. What it means is that if you are, supposing you are a scholar of Vedas, you have studied the Vedas, you have studied Sanskrit, Vedas, and you do chanting, you memorize it, and you go into Rig Veda and all the various aspects of the Rig Vedas and so on, and you are very excited that your son, you can teach your son and propagate this knowledge to the others. Instead, your son turns out to be a duffer. Not only a duffer who doesn't understand, he goes into some bad habits. He starts to drink and smoke and have all kinds of things and so on, has no interest in learning. Can you imagine the level of grieving of the Panditaha? Shastragyaha? He cannot stand his son to be like this. His life is spoiled. So the son is alive, not dead. As an alive son gives him grief. Dead sons can give you grief, and live sons can give you grief if you are one of these two types. Then he says, the last line, Panditaha tu gatasun agatasun cha putradinam na anushochanti. But he says that if you are a real wise person, in either case it does not affect you. If you have children that have gone wrong, you smile and say, this is the way things are. Or whatever happened, happened. I accept it. And if your children die, you find Ishvara took them away, must be a reason for it, and so they don't really grieve. And so this is the mark of a Pandita. But Arjuna, you are not a Pandita. So he says that in page 40, the last one, Sada, second line, Sada sarvatra brahmadarshanam hi pandityam. Brahmanaha pandityam nirvidya iti shrutehe. Ataha ukta lakshana bhavat tvam mudhaha eva natu panditaha ityartha. So this is very interesting. On the very last line of any of these verses, it summarizes the content, the main content of the entire one. So he says, Ataha, therefore, because you do not have the lakshana of this kind of pandityam, therefore I have to say, you are a mudha, you are a confused person, not a really pandita. This is the meaning of this verse. Anyway, I think we have spent some time on doing this, and anyway, I hope that this kind of an introduction is meaningful for you, and this way of the what is called the advanced one will continue to be done. Our challenge will be to grapple with the sheer mass of all this, but I think I will try not to go through the detailed text because it is not possible in this time frame, but to summarize the main content and continue to contrast and compare the advanced student versus the non-advanced student as we go forward with this. This is what I'll try to do. So what I would say is that in each of these classes, we will spend half hour on the Nidhidhasanam, and about an hour on the Bhagavad Gita, which may not be enough. And this is how we will go through. So with that, I close the class. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. But I think so. I see that you're having some problems in finding the page. I don't know why that is. I think what I'm going to have to do is to look at the digital version. I'll go there and see if the page numbers of this book, the one that I have, this one here, should be exactly the same as the new version that I sent to 9 of you, and 10 more are expected. I don't know when they will come. So those page numbers are the same, but possibly the digital version, I don't know why the digital version would be any different. So there should not be any confusion about what page it is on. Anyway, we need to resolve it. That's not acceptable that you cannot find the page number. So let me understand Zarina's question. Isn't the Brahma Akshara Vritti, Brahma Akara Vritti still Mithya and an imposition on the Mithya mind? In this case, isn't the Brahma Vritti still Dvaitam until one assimilates the Aikyam between Paramatma and I? So yeah, that's true. But why are you bringing that point up? I don't understand. Let me just, are you, Zarina, are you discussing some implications from our discussion from Panna's question last time. I think what you say is true, but I don't understand why you are bringing it up, what the point is. This is true, yes, so what? Anyway, that's a separate thing, and maybe you and I can discuss it on the email. But Chawla says this is not true. Digital book is small in size, has more pages. Okay, then I have to look into it and then make sure that my references to the page numbers are more accurate, because I would have seen the digital version separately before the class and noted the differences in the page numbers. So I'm very sorry that you could not find the page number of that. But at least I know a couple of you did find the ones, Srida and others, so I'm happy about that. We have to resolve it because there's going to be continued references on the Sanskritam, as I had promised when we set up the class, and I'm going to go through with that as much as possible. So we'll see how that goes. All right, it is 9:40. Yeah, the verse number and the chapter number are pretty obvious. We are doing this second chapter, verse number such and such. That should be, I thought that was pretty obvious, but maybe not. So I will make it a point of doing that. All right, if there's no further questions, it's already 9:41, so we will close the class. And if you have any questions or comments, please do send me an email separately. Okay? Hari Om.